So for our first keynote, we have Mr. Jesper Palmqvist, Area Director, Asia Pacific STR. Jesper has more than 20 years of experience on the supplier and aggregator sides in hospitality, online travel, and IT through various verticals in regional European IT startups, hotel chains, as well as global companies such as Orbitz Worldwide, Wyndham Hotel Group, and Groupon. Yes, today, Jesper is here to take us through the hotel view of the world. Over to you, Jesper.
Oh, hello there.
Hello.
It's crowded from the green room. Hello. Let's see, where do I put my water in case there's an emergency? Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Manav. And look at this. How exciting am this and how excited am I? It's awesome to be back in India. For me, personally, after 2 years, to see a lot of people. We've seen it in Bangkok a few weeks ago. It's so great to see it back. And when I walk around, I like risk, positive and negative. I like stories in all directions. And of course, when I look at this, I'm trying now, because for 2 years we've been looking for negative stories. If there was nothing else. It's really hard. I've done my best to try and find some really negative stuff today. I've tried, but it's been very hard. Because the fact remains that around the world, we've seen good growth. But we're not there at 2019 levels. So one of the things I declared earlier on that we're doing a lot of indexing to 2019. Sometimes people want us to give me the actual numbers. What's happening around the world exactly? Right now, I find it very relevant to compare to 2019 in many different ways. And we're not there yet, but in rates around the world, it's looking very, very good indeed. We know it's a demand crisis. It's not a rate crisis. Things dropped off for many years. So in 2021, we are in many areas even above 2019 levels. And we'll talk about that today as well. Why are rates behaving the way they do, and what's coming next? And never mind the small numbers in here. Focus on the colors. India loves colors. Around the world, everywhere, 2021, it's a lot of red and yellow, less green. And even through the Omicron, just the first 2 months of this year, what happens is, I'm not saying they're all green, but there's a lot more green than it used to be. And there's more yellow, just 2 months through Omicron as well. That is promising, and I like that as a trend when we go through. And if we drill down on just Asia Pacific, the main thing is, and something I remind Wall Street journalists very often, what is the RevPAR for Asia Pacific? Who cares? No one cares. What does that mean? Asia Pacific is huge and vast, and you need to look at that in separation. Just look at the variety. Thailand, and even Vietnam not listed there, huge variation in demand gap to 2021. Singapore, obviously helped by government support for 2 years. Now no more. What happens then? I'll mention that later. Rate-wise, also closer, but still variation. Tons of stories, and we'll touch on them, some of them today. But I couldn't find too much negative. I'll throw it in, but I want to focus on what I really like right now, what I love, and what I think matters in how people make decisions here and around the world today. And one of the best things is on the first quarter, as Omicron coming through, we know that as it lowered around the world in all these regions, it didn't fall as deep, it didn't fall as quickly, and it disrupted how restrictions were going away for a brief moment in time. That black line is 2019, so you want to dance around that 100 line. And what do you think the rates are? They are up there. They're absolutely close by, and around the world, they're above. So we are seeing in the first quarter this year, rates at 2019 levels, and that is interesting, right? We know how it impacts, and it's not profitability I'm talking here, yes, but it's good to see when you combine these. It's even better displayed when you talk about India. 1 wave, 2 waves, 3 waves. As those cases obviously go live, what we care about is how that green line just looks milder and better, and it doesn't fall as quickly. So when there are fears about fourth waves and permutations and changes in this crisis, it clearly looks a lot better. And we think that we can manage that moving forward, as does obviously this great state there, where I don't have to wear a mask on stage or with you out there. So I like that. Another thing that we really like is around the world, people are going back to the office. People are going back to the city. There's an example from the US, how apartment, residential occupancies and rents are going back up pre-COVID level. Another thing, what happened during the pandemic? People started using online tools. When Zoom listed pre-pandemic, pretty good timing, right? And they're going out there and everyone's been Zooming or doing Teams and everything. Share price grows crazy through the roof and that's great. That growth was never going to last forever, right? And then there's stabilized the share price down there now in 22. Brand like Etsy, online shopping, etc., strong growth through the pandemic. Growth is not the same anymore. We're coming out of that phase as restrictions are moving away. What about travel stock? Just putting up Hilton and Expedia. Clearly lost a lot of market share through the pandemic and dropped down. Where are they now? Above pre-pandemic levels. We are returning to office, we're returning to meetings, we are returning around the world, even in markets that we did not see it for a long time. Vietnam, lockdown, opening up. Parts of Southeast Asia, where we said. I really feel for my team, colleagues, and many people in Shanghai at the moment. It's horrible to see things coming back over and over again and locked down. What it does to mental health and how you operate in the market. But overall, broadly, we are returning. This is happening. We're seeing more news about countries that have been so reluctant, and I like that. I definitely like that. And even if that light blue line of Asia, when travel impact and how we come back, is a far way away from the rest, now that those restrictions go away, it will speed up quickly. We'll come back. And when you look at what's missing, air. We need flights around the world, and domestic seats projected to hit 2019 levels, but what we care more about is international. And if those dotted lines continue up, look how close we're getting to 2019 levels in capacity. We need the flights back. All the domestic Indian flights, all the ones going into Southeast Asia, and all around that. So, great, I like that too. There is a fear of COVID around the world that varied around countries. We go out and we do this survey, we ask not just performance data, but we ask thousands of people around the world, if you book now, are you afraid of COVID impacting your travel? Post-alpha, pre-delta, 50-60% said, no, I'm okay. Then came delta, changed nature, 25%. We asked them again in February, we're back up. People are seeing, confidence is growing. We're okay to travel again. I'm okay. I'm less afraid. I've seen what it does. And what's cool for hotels is that every time we ask this, would you stay in a hotel? That share is increasing compared to homestay and other forms of accommodation. And as we know, people were looking countryside, outside, social distancing. What's growing the most? Beach, small town, and dare I say it, city breaks. You remember those? City breaks, going over the weekend like they do everywhere in Europe. And that is on people's minds, and it's growing for people to get ready to do that, which is great for CBD hotels, etc. But the market that has enjoyed this period for 18 months, looking the other way, is of course the Maldives. Talking about dancing above the 2019 line. ADR and occupancy, rates and occupancy, very often above 2019 levels for a long time, and very much high above it as well. Great profitability, wage cost, all that stuff, and energy cost, minimal impact in that sense compared to many of the markets. It's been a good time to own hotels in the Maldives. And they keep being progressive, making it easier for people to travel there. Now they removed the PCR test a while back as well. More people are going to keep coming. It isn't an easy journey, though. Go back a month ago, we saw cancellations. Why? The war. The war from Russia to Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine, or both, and in neighboring states, had large shares going into the Maldives, as you can see there. But it's also true that China in 2019 was a big source market to the Maldives and now doesn't exist. No one really today believes that the China outbound market is going to massively be reintroduced in 22. It's about 23. Where will it start and how will it start? We've got to wait until the Congress in Q3, Q4 early and see how Chinese people are going to be able to and willing to travel abroad. Notice there also India. India as a source market, and if you manage hotels only and you're like, I don't care about that. Well, if they go more abroad, will they go to your property? People now in Thailand and around the world are saying, I want some more Indians. Let's get more flights. They're like the Indian travelers. There are more of them going to happen more and more moving forward. And when we look at the Maldives on the books, what is the occupancy right now in the next 90 days out? Higher than last year. Confidence keeps growing, and that's new source markets that didn't maybe travel in the last few months as well. Sri Lanka is an amazing country that I love going to, and I can't wait to go back. And before this, when we looked in 21, you can see that, again, not a rate crisis, actually hitting 2019 levels, and occupancies to start going back up to the right levels. Same thing with the waves, shorter, sharper, nasty, but occupancies are coming back. It is true that in the last few weeks, it's challenging, economically, politically, but it's great to see, and I really think, because that great nation deserves a lot better, I think that that can be resolved hopefully very quickly now in Q2 and start seeing it coming back. We know that people want to experience the great hospitality of Sri Lanka, so I really hope that that resolves quickly. Because they've got a lot of great new product. A lot of you have put great new hotels there as well for the experience and the new roads and logistics there as well. But what about those Indian travelers that will then leave? If they're not, if they're not leaving, they want to go. Where have they been going in 2021? A lot of that, we've seen an increase like never before in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Jodhpur, and you want to be up there in the top right quadrant because then you're growing both occupancy and ADR compared to 2019. They're growing rate a lot. Hotels are able to charge more than they've ever done. This is good. So people go into those regional areas, which makes sense. One of the things that stands out most for me in India is similar to Indonesia, that throughout the pandemic, metro locations and leisure grew at the same time, and it wasn't like, say, in Australia, where Sydney CBD gone, Melbourne CBD gone, right? Here, you went to cities, especially in the coming out of Delta and going forward. Same in Indonesia. Weekday travel, small MICE business was happening early. Not what we've seen throughout the pandemic in most other markets, including Australia. So that's something that clearly benefits the boost of India as a whole. So we like to put a recovery scenario in these buckets, like depression, recession, recovery, and peak. And the cool thing there is India is right up there now. At the end of this quarter, we're in that last 15, 10% of being back into real, proper, historic growth because of that fast trajectory in the last few months as well. And when we look on the books, what do hotels have right now looking into the future? Higher than last year, higher than pre-Delta last year. Things are moving along. But if you look at the pickup pace, higher, short booking window. Still have the short booking window. I think both in terms of source market, length of stay, and booking windows, all those things will take a little bit longer to establish and get to where they are, where they want to be. And it's also true because we don't yet have the confidence of every international traveler, me and other people who've gone here today. Listen, it took me 20 minutes from tarmac to my car on Monday night. It's pretty amazing. So Mumbai, New Delhi are leading occupancy on the books right now as domestic big hubs instead when compared to Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Pune. So we'll expect to see that. Now, where India really excels, and I'm desperately still trying to find negative stuff. Maybe I'll get there. But we're taking our masks off, big groups here today, but in the US, they're celebrating that group business is back to 2/3, and it's really good. Now, what that means in America is that overall nationwide ADR goes down, right? Because if your group ADR is lower, when you mix that up again, transient is higher, so it mixes it. In Europe, of course, and never mind the scribbly charts, peaks is what's interesting. People are going to go for a concert, for a MICE event, and they are really doing that in advance throughout the European cities. They're planning the summer, they're planning the public holiday weekends, and that's great. What about India? Can't compare it. That's a totally different ballgame because India showed in December that the group occupancy peaked at 2019 levels. When weddings come back, they really come back. And I know Omicron muted it a little bit there, but if you look at March now as well, weddings, IPL, not combined. That's a good event though, IPL weddings. Maybe during tea break. So that's great, but it's not just about the occupancy, it's about the ADR. ADR levels in group are reaching 2019 levels. But what mostly stands out is the difference between ADR for transient travelers and group travelers is the difference there is not that big. Most cases around the world, you'll have, like I said, in the US. So that means you won't suffer from that overall softening from rate as group returns. Let's talk about the rates though. People are willing to pay. What's cool in the US is that when you compare recession 20 years ago and the global financial crisis, we're already a recovered rate much quicker this time. That happened very quickly, and that's good. We need that overall. And you saw this earlier, how all the rates in the first quarter and throughout 2021 was moving. It wasn't a rate crisis. People have a lot of savings after 2 years. It was a long crisis. They want to spend it in your hotels. They do. And I know that hotels have also suffered from a profitability standpoint because energy cost and logistics, all those things combined, that means you need to push up rates as well. So combined, we continue to see rates across. And what that means in India is, of course, reaching 2019 levels at the end of last year, and we're not far off, with luxury leading the way, which makes sense. So rates, not a big problem. And I suppose for me, it was surprising how quickly rates come back in India. When you look historically over 10, 15 years, they would go a little bit slower. But good news. Restrictions is the biggest buzzkill in the world. And if you look at markets like Sanya and China and Queensland, Maldives and Rajasthan, Goa, those are huge ADR growth numbers. But when you're in Bangkok and Bali, where restrictions have been, you don't only lose demand, you lose ADR growth as well. Cities will start to come back. And I was in Bangkok recently, and on the books, there's occupancy better than last year, but look at the short booking window. We'll take it. It's better than before. Same thing in Sydney. The peaks are higher. Things are moving into the cities now again. The engine's starting to go. Maybe one exception, my hometown. What happens right now in Singapore is that all that amazing government support, after 2 years, quarantine hotels, not needed anymore, and before we get the engine really going, it's going to be a little bit of a rocky ride for a quarter or two before we hit there. But they'll get there. I'm sure they will. So let's round this up with a bit of forecasting. So we've just in February now updated our forecast and made US will come back to 2019 levels in RevPAR, right? In RevPAR already this year. We also moved Asia-Pacific cities so that already by 23 we'll be up to 90%. We've been talking about 2024 for 2 years now, but we're taking key cities 6 months earlier now just because of the speed of the trajectory. And why? It's because, yes, domestic plays a big part, but we believe that intra-regional travel will come much faster than we expected earlier. Intra-ASEAN, right, between Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia. So we think we're a little bit more positive. Can I please get some negative news? It's the risk that when we talk about inflation, we still think, together with Oxford Economics, that we are at peak inflation. Those 6-7%, which is high for many markets now, will that go away? Are we peaking out? We think so, but this is inflation. We can't guarantee it. With the geopolitical challenges around the world and the logistics, with Shanghai as such a big hub closed down, it's putting pressure on logistics around the world. And people talk about pandemic, endemic. To be truly endemic means that we know how this virus behaves and there's no surprises coming. Don't really, do we? I don't think we do. So we can't say it's truly endemic until we really know. But we're willing to take a gamble after 2 long years, and so far it's looking good. We're vaccinated and we're ready to go. Another thing that has been a huge challenge abroad, so not so much maybe here, was that wage growth has hurt profitability of countries. What it looks like in the US, that we're finally seeing that growth has started to flatten out and lower. That's good. Because in India, it's a different challenge. If you're hiring in India, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of talent. You can find people here. The trick is more finding the right person for you, because there's a lot of talent out there. But in China, you bid, really. I'll pay you more. Come to me, come to me. And in Singapore, we're missing migrant workers. It's hard to find staff. It depends on where you are and where you're operating, if that labor crisis is suffering from the Great Resignation, like in the US, or something else. It's very different in India, of course. And speaking of India, when new supply, it's good to see greenfield happening and some new properties opening up, particularly in the Northeast. You see some great, exciting projects. It's still a lot of conversions. Yes, that's cool, right? Often from individual brands or something into the either new or classic brands that are doing well and growing here in India. Many other parts of the world, I talk about Phuket, 15% new supply coming. All that delayed is going to come and delay a recovery. In India, it's hard to find many markets where that new supply is so big that it's going to hurt the recovery. So I'm less worried about it here. More good news. Darn, didn't mean for that. So my takeaways has to be and remain positive. We've talked about how that demand comes back for 2 years. And listen, it'll continue, it will surpass 2019, and that's good. I think people haven't yet spent all their savings. They're willing to pay for their experiences. The rate growth in India and elsewhere has been tremendous. And we know that inflation is in there, but it hurts profitability a bit. But we know the efficiencies that many hotels have done means you need X occupancy instead of Y to hit your GOP margin. Very nice, right? And arguably, relationships between owners and brands are better than ever because you had to communicate for 2 years coming out of the crisis. And listen, we have so many challenges that we've gone through this. I really think people will continue to travel again. And I'm still too positive. Couldn't find any more negative things. Listen, thank you so much to the team here at Grand Hyatt Mumbai for hosting this event and Hotelivate. Thank you so much. Good to see you.